Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mindset Matters. My name is Victoria. I'm so glad that you're joining me today. Today, we're going to discuss a kind of popular term on the internet, which is doing it for the plot. When people tell you, do it for the plot, do it for the plot, should you do it for the plot? So, I want to talk about when you should do it for the plot and when you freaking shouldn't, okay? And stop using that as an excuse to do things that are probably self-damaging. Okay, so if you're new here, hi, my name is Victoria. This is a podcast where we choose to look at life through the lens of resilience, presence, and gratitude. We live our best lives and we are mindful and bring mindfulness into day to day. So that's my little intro. I have a tea. One thing I'll say, today I don't have very many notes. I feel like the last couple podcasts I've done, I had too many notes and I felt like I was reading a script a little bit, and it's like in the moment, okay, this is kind of random, but in the moment of me having an idea for a podcast, I write it down. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I'm writing out my points almost as if I'm doing the episode and it's flowing, right? But the problem is when I revisit those notes and I'm actually recording, like the thought process is just a little bit different. And so it doesn't always feel as natural. Anyways, so today I have very minimal notes. I've got a tea. I'm feeling very centered. I was so zen this morning, and then I had like a little bit of a mini, I'm talking too fast again. I had a mini epiphany. I'm not going to share, but I've just been like thinking about something that is exciting. And I sent my friend a voice note to talk about it. And I was so excited. So now I'm like, let's recenter and let's have a relaxed, chill podcast together. I've been told I have a very good podcasting voice, which surprised me because I've always felt like my voice was maybe too high pitched and a little bit annoying. Now I feel like I'm talking low on purpose. But I want today to be relaxing and zen, but also fun, because this is a fun concept. Okay, so let's get into it. Now I'm just rambling. So, doing it for the plot. I've seen this on TikTok, on the internet, where people are like debating whether they should do something, and then either they tell themselves or someone tells them, do it for the plot, right? And it kind of means say yes because, well, YOLO, you only live once. It makes life interesting to do it for the plot. Who cares? Just do it. Go for it. And I think that there are times when, yes, you should do it for the plot. But there are also times where I don't think that is a good excuse. And it's allowing people maybe to engage in behavior that they know they shouldn't engage in. And I have an example for this later on. So I kind of want to talk about when you should do it for the plot and when you should say yes to things. And I think the biggest thing is when something genuinely feels exciting to you, or you have this little like strike from your intuition telling you to do it. And this can look different for so many different people. Learning to tap into your intuition is like a whole other thing, and it's a skill, I think, to be practiced. But I feel like our gut feeling rarely disappoints us. Like our gut feeling often is steering us in the right direction. So if you have a gut feeling and you're maybe scared to do something that you know you want to do, then I think that's a time when you need to say, do it for the plot. Do it for the plot. I also, okay, for anyone who maybe hasn't heard do it for the plot, maybe I didn't explain it that well, but in this case, the plot means like your life. Okay, your life plot. You are the main character of your life, right? And I do think in this way, romanticizing our lives and saying like, okay, I'm the main character, like what is she up to today? And sometimes the main character makes poor decisions. But if your life is a movie or a book, you are the main character, the plot has to have twists and turns in order to be interesting, right? So when people say to do it for the plot, it's kind of like saying, say yes to this thing, or just do it because it will be interesting or it will add excitement to your life. And I think this can be a fun way to like look at it. And if you have that kind of intuition tap of, I actually think that this could be exciting. So let's say maybe there's like a job opportunity that comes up and you're feeling like you want to go for it, but you're scared, and maybe you're telling yourself like, oh, I won't succeed, or it's too scary, it's too new, right? This is like negative self-talk. You're not encouraging yourself. This might be a good opportunity for someone in your life to be like, hey, do it for the plot, try it. You want this job, why not give it a go? And that's a way to like encourage you, right? I also want to talk about a book called Year of Yes. This is by Shonda Rhimes, who is the very successful television show creator, the creator of Grey's Anatomy, among other things. But this book is really about her life, and I'm going to read part of the back to give you a synopsis. As a self-described introvert with 3 hit shows on television and 3 children at home, Shonda Rhimes had plenty of reasons to say no. Then came Thanksgiving 2013 when Shonda's sister Dolores muttered 6 little words at her. You never say yes to anything. Those 6 words became a wake-up call and a challenge. She committed for 1 year to say yes. First came the terrifying public yeses, delivering the commencement address at Dartmouth, appearing on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and then came the excruciating private yeses, reevaluating her health and confronting the damaging relationships in her life head on. Really good book. But essentially, it talks about, okay, as an introvert, this super successful woman would say no to everything. She didn't ever want to go on television and do interviews. She never wanted to do speaking events. And she would always find excuses. And it kind of is like, again, her sister saying you never say yes to anything was a wake-up call. She almost wasn't even aware of it, right? It was just so second nature to her to find excuses to say no. So if that resonates with you and you are someone who is maybe more introverted, or you kind of let opportunities pass you by because you're afraid, and you kind of always are finding excuses to not do things, even though in that intuition spark, that kind of gut feeling we just talked about, you want to say yes, right? And I think it can be scary to push yourself, again, out of your comfort zone, as we talk a lot about on this channel. But what I like about this book is, you know, as an introvert who became so successful with her television shows, yeah, lots of people wanted to talk to her and interview her, and she always found a way to say no. And she talks about her health issues, how she gained a lot of weight and maybe was avoiding, taking up exercise and taking good care of herself. So I think just like Shonda did, where she's like, okay, this is the year of yeses. I'm going to say yes to the things that excite me, even if it's scary and even if I want to make excuses. I think that is the case where you should do it for the plot and challenge yourself to say yes to one scary thing a month, or to apply to a new job if something comes up, or to, let go of a toxic relationship even. It can look like so many different things, but like doing it for the plot, I think, is a good way to like, oh, this actually would help my life, right? Like her saying yes was like totally enhancing the plot of her life. Hey, the plot in her shows are great and they're so exciting. And like for her, that's kind of an escape of, well, I don't need my own life to be this exciting because I can escape by creating these characters with crazy, exciting lives. I want to shift into when you should not do it for the plot. And this is kind of actually something that happened to me recently, where I was texting a friend, something came up, and I was debating saying yes to something. I don't want to give details, but I was debating saying yes to something, and I think in my heart I knew I shouldn't do this thing. But I was texting my friend and I was like, oh, I might just do it for the plot. And I literally used those words. I might just do it for the plot. And she said to me, I don't think you should. I don't think you should, but think about it. Really think about it. And I had to really take a step back and be like, okay, should I do this for the plot, or do I know that this is like harmful to me in some way? And when I really thought about it, I decided, no, I'm not opening that door. The door has been closed. I'm not opening it. And I think doing it for the plot and then engaging in behavior where like you're going back to a toxic relationship or toxic person, or you're doing something against your values, or you have this feeling of like, oh, well, what if I regret not doing it or not going? And I feel like, again, you kind of have to tap into your intuition and really think about that gut feeling. And think about like, okay, is this something that I actually should be doing? For me, as where I am in my life now, should I be going backwards? Maybe, right? Because I think a lot of people I've seen on like TikTok videos of like, oh, me not wanting to text my toxic ex, but doing it for the plot. And it's like, well, is that who you want to be? You know what I mean? Like, if you're okay with the consequences that come with that and possibly the pain that comes with that, then that's fine. But I think as you grow, you kind of learn what behaviors you know are like going to be harmful to you in the end. And even if you have some sort of like desire to do something, I feel like in your heart you kind of know whether or not you should actually do it. So when I know I keep saying like, oh, you'll know in your gut, your heart, and like some people might be like, well, how do I actually know? If you feel like you might regret doing the thing, or like it could be a bad thing for you, I wouldn't do it, right? And you have to determine like, okay, well, what determines whether it's bad? This is why I use the example of like going back to like a toxic relationship, or saying yes to seeing like someone who's been toxic to you in the past, let's say. I feel like in that case, would you regret not seeing them when like you already know the type of relationship that you had with that person, right? It's like I always say, oh, I try to live without regret, and I can always learn from every experience. But that's the thing. If I'm going back to something that was a mistake or was bad for me in the past, then me doing it for the plot and saying yes is actually me not learning from my past mistakes, right? So I think it's really important to really think about, did I close this door? And if yes, well, it should probably stay closed. So one thing I mentioned a little bit earlier was you shouldn't say yes to the plot if this thing goes against your values. And I think in order to know that, you really do need to know what is valuable to you, or what are your values, and like what is really important to you as a person, right? So I think doing that work of like self-discovery of like, okay, well, who am I and who do I want to be? Because I think everything comes down to having a good sense of self, of like, I know who I am, I know what's important to me, and I know what I will and will not like put up with in a way. Because when I think of like doing it for the plot, it's like sometimes it is saying yes to things you know are not good for you. But if you have this sense of self-worth and you know that there are certain things you won't accept or you're not willing to like do, then I think you'll be able to make that decision a little bit easier. But in the same way, if you have this sense of self-worth, but you're curious about this thing, doing it for the plot, and you can objectively like look at yourself and say, okay, if I do this, what are the possible outcomes? Start with your inward gut feeling. But maybe you need to like make a pros and cons list of like, what are my possible outcomes? And of course, we can never fully predict everything, but I think, as humans, our brains are kind of like calculators, and they're always analyzing, our potential loss or gain, our potential profit, our potential choices, right? So it's okay to say, okay, I need to kind of analyze, if I say yes, what could happen or what could go wrong? If I say no, how will I feel, right? Imagine you say no. how are you going to feel? Do you feel like maybe you really want it? And again, I always think like sometimes you want something, but you know it's like not good for you. And I think that can be the most challenging thing is like you want to do it for the plot. You want to just go for it because in your heart you're like, oh, I kind of just want this thing or I want to like see it through. But I think sometimes it's like you're in a cycle where you just keep going around and around and like nothing changes. So I don't know. I feel like in that way, don't do it. Don't do it. So I hope it's kind of clear the differences and the different types of situations. Like obviously going back to Year of Yes with Shonda Rhimes, like the things she was saying no to that she pushed herself to say yes to were things like interviews and, you know, being in the public eye, delivering speeches, like confronting her health, like all these things that in the end made her a better version of herself because she realized that she could be out of her comfort zone and she could survive it, right? So if you're introverted and you want to put yourself out there, but you keep finding excuses, this is where I think you need to do it for the plot. But on the other hand, as a recap, if you're going back to something that you've already experienced and it didn't end well the first time, probably not a good idea to go back to it. Or if it's something where you have that gut feeling of, this is not where I'm supposed to be, don't do it for the plot, right? Like trust yourself too and do some journaling for self-discovery, for clarity to figure out, well, what are my values? You know, what is it that I want and who is the person that I want to be? Because I think we all have this kind of ideal self, right? And it can take some work to kind of discover what your ideal self looks like. And this is something I work with my coaching clients is like, what does your ideal self look like and what is your personal vision? Because that really helps steer you in the right direction. If you know what your personal vision is and you know generally the type of person you want to be, well, then you're more likely to make decisions that help you become that person. And I think that is a great way to, again, distinguish if doing it for the plot is going to help you get closer to that version of you, that ideal self, or take you further away by doing something that you shouldn't be doing. I'm going to leave you with that today. Love you guys. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a beautiful week, and I will chat with you very soon.